Hey everybody, it's Jarrod, Ulrich the Yard Sale Artist for the Longbox Crusade here with just a random um, Longbox video, sort of a doing it live bonus, if you will. I recently finished Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and at Longbox headquarters, our founder Pat Sampson said, "Hey, how would you rank it? Where would you rank it?" And that got me to thinking, how many Legend of Zelda games have there been on the main console? So I'm not talking about handhelds uh, or anything like that, like mainline consoles. The NES, the Super NES, the N64, the Wii, the Wii U, and the Switch, basically. There are some great games on handheld, but when I looked back on how many there were for those main line consoles, there were 10. I thought, well, that's perfect for a top 10 list. Of course, that means we're not going to count, as it says in very, very fine print right here. It says console games, okay, except for the Philips CDI. Those obscure Legend of Zelda games on the Philips CDI, we're not going to count those. We're talking about the mainline Zelda games uh, on the main consoles, going back to the original on the NES all the way through the Switch. Now, before we get into the list, I want to be very, very specific. So if you're completely bought in, you've got a very favorite Zelda game, and it let's say it ranks very, very low on my list, don't get upset because there's a couple things you need to know. First of all, I champion all the Zelda games. Okay, maybe not the ones on the Philips CDI, but I haven't actually played those, so I can't say that for sure. But I love Zelda games. In fact, I've beaten every Zelda game that they've made with the exception of the Philips CDIs, and I love them all. I don't think that there is a bad one. I'm also um, really focusing on the main Zelda adventures because I know they have like the Hyrule Warriors and stuff like that, and the Four Swords adventures. Like I'm really just focused on the big scale Zelda. So those are the 10 that we're going to be looking at. So if your favorite one ranks really low, don't get mad because another key thing to remember, not only do I love them all, but like the distance between 1 and 10 is not far. In fact, if I made this list, 6 months from now, it might be a little different. And I'm glad I mentioned that because the timing of making this list is going to be particularly interesting for a few of these games. And I'll address that more when we get to them. But like I said, I just finished Tears of the Kingdom about 10 days ago. And that's when Pat initially asked me about what I thought. And I thought, yeah, I do want to do a top 10 list for that. But I'm always hesitant to like rank a game immediately after I finish it. I like to wait at least a few days, maybe a week, 10 days in this case, to really think about it because you don't want that recency bias. You don't want to be like, oh, that was so great. I just beat it. It's better than anything else. I like to marinate on it, think about it for a few days. So it's been 10 days since I beat that one. And the timing's also good because over the last about 2 years, I've been doing a replay of all the Zelda games. I have a son who is currently 9, and since the time he was about 7, he's been very interested in the Zelda games. And so I went back and I replayed them while he watched or sometimes helped with strategy guide stuff and things like that, or occasionally got to play a little bit himself. But he was sort of like my co-pilot on those. And so I replayed a bunch of them. And that really made some of my preconceptions or feelings of the games that I had before change a lot. So I will address those as we go along. We'll talk about the top 10 as I see it from, Jarrod Albrecht, the art sale artist point of view. Again, if it doesn't match with yours, I'm not slamming any game. In fact, we will roll into number 10, which is the bottom of the list, but I still love it. So number 10 for me is The Adventure of Link, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link on the NES. This one, I think a lot of you probably could have seen this coming. It's the most different of the games. It really focuses a lot more on side-scrolling action and not as much sort of, top down of the original 3 console games. This one's a bit of an outlier. So it's not as one of the things that keeps it down for me is not necessarily the side-scrolling element. I actually applaud them for taking a risk and doing something different with Zelda 2, because I mean they didn't know really what they had when they brought out Zelda 1 and it was a massive hit. They're like, oh, this is great. And sequels, the second one is often really hard to land properly because you don't know where this is going, right? So they took an innovative approach, and I totally like and respect that. And I still remember the music, and I still remember some of those little sword fighting patterns to beat some of the guys and stuff like that. So that's certainly cool. I would say its biggest downside is I feel like it came out right in that window where games were getting more and more cryptic with how you move forward to solve puzzles and stuff. Some of the puzzle solving on this, the places you have to go and things you have to do in the overworld map, especially the things you have to find, and can be just pure luck or very cryptic clues. Now, Legend of Zelda is kind of famous for its cryptic clues, but I think they're especially cryptic here in Zelda 2. And when I was talking about that very narrow window, that's what I call the very narrow window of Nintendo power. Like, I think game designers started relying a little too heavily on Nintendo power. Like, well, we'll put the secrets out in Nintendo Power, or we'll put the maps out in Nintendo Power or whatever, which is great if you have a subscription to Nintendo Power, which I didn't. And so, I think there was this window where they were really relying on Nintendo Power to help you with games. And it might have been a bit of a sales thing, like make your games a little more cryptic so people kind of want to go buy Nintendo Power, like it to sell more copies. I don't know if it goes that deep, if the if the conspiracy goes that deep, but I feel like this era of Nintendo, especially, I'm thinking of like Castlevania 2. I feel like there's a lot of similarities between Castlevania 2 and Zelda 2. And yeah, I think it is at its most cryptic. In fact, personally, I played Zelda 2. I probably actually got the game in about 89 or 90, and I played it for a while and I got stuck. And I laughed because it was 89, because I remember I laughed because I finally got unstuck and figured out where to go next thanks to the internet 11 years later in 2000. I had my copy of the save file was still there. It's still good. I popped it in 2000, had the internet, was able to pull it up and kind of figure out what to do next. And that in 2000 is when I finished the game. I started in 89, finished it 11 years later in 2000. That's kind of how cryptic it was. So while I appreciate the Nintendo Power era of secret sharing, the whole lunchroom aspect of things, this starts with a lot of Nintendo games where you and your buddies sit around, you kind of, hey, I found this, I found that. If you're lucky, one of your buddies has a subscription to Nintendo Power. It's from that era, and I like it for that, but also I think it's its biggest detractor. I don't know if I'm gonna have as much to say about all of them as I did number 10, but let's go to number 9. Okay, I do have some stuff to say about my number 9 game, which is Majora's Mask on the N64. This game, first of all, it's wonderful. It's great. Like, the fact that it's at number 9 befuddles me a little bit, but let me tell you why. I told you in my intro that doing the recent replay of the games really shifted things around. This was the most dramatic shift for me going through the replay of the games with my son. If you had asked me, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, what's the best Zelda game ever made, I would have said Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask sat in my number 1 spot for a long, long time. I had played it and beat it somewhere around, I would say 2003. Yeah, 2003, 2004. I kind of came to it late, and I just really liked it. I loved its creativity and I loved its energy. It was very different in some ways and very similar in other ways. Like, graphically, it's very similar, and it uses like the same engine and stuff from Ocarina of Time. They are, very close in that regard, but they're very different in that Majora's Mask does sort of you work through the 3-day cycle, then you reset it, and they make a lot of clever side quests and adventures with that, which is a lot of fun. And for the longest time, this was in my number one spot because it was so creative with that and the use of all the different masks and all that. Wonderful game, great game. This is one of those ones I'm like, it's low on my list. It's in at number 9, but I have such love for it. The problem comes when I replayed it this past year. I popped this one in. I just finished Ocarina. I was like, okay, let's do Majora's Mask. And I started playing it. And it became like a chore. Like, I don't know what happened to me internally as a gamer, but the whole you're running out of time, 3 days thing just wore me down. Like, it became more of an annoyance that I just didn't want to deal with. And I think it's because I've changed as a gamer, because I used to basically take on all comers. I'd play any game, no matter how hard it was, and I'd dedicate time to it till I finally beat it. And I drive myself nuts with that. And then somewhere along the lines, a couple of years ago, I really changed how I game, because I would, I'd get frustrated and I'd curse at the screen and use bad words, and I've got, 2 boys at home, and I really couldn't do that anymore. And more importantly, I just looked at myself like, what are you doing to yourself? Like, you're making yourself difficult to be around. My wife didn't want to be around. My kids didn't want to be around because of the way I acted. And so I said, what can I do to change it? So I became much more of what you might call a casual gamer. I started playing games on easier levels. I'm much more interested in the Zelda style games that aren't particularly hard, but there's a lot to do. And I like that kind of game now. So this Majora's Mask, unlike any of the other games on this list, has this built-in mechanic that is sort of constantly putting pressure on you. That time mechanic, which I remember being very clever in its use, and I think that's still fair. But that time pressure mechanic just isn't for me anymore. Like I get my hackles up when I play. Oh, and you know what I've never really figured out or understood how they work are the owl statues. Like I was trying to make use of the owl statues in the game, and I still don't fully understand it because they never quite did what I wanted them to do. And so about the time I tried to, use the owl statues to take care of progress and stuff, and it just wasn't working the way I wanted it to. And I actually didn't finish the replay of it. I was like, it's basically too stressful. It has an element of stress to it that I guess did not bother me 20 years ago, but it does now. And that's why it sank all the way from number 1 to 9 on this list. I still love it. I still think it's great. I think I would love to watch playthrough videos of it like on YouTube, but I don't want to be the one playing anymore. It's that added stress factor that I just don't enjoy like I once did. Still a wonderful game though. Okay, let's go to number 8. Number 8, and I bet a lot of you out there are going, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is so low." I'll explain myself. We're talking Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. This is a straight up classic, right? I think the reason this one is so low for me, even though I will remind you, this stack of 10 is compressed. Like, I still love this game. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. Um, it's it's fantastic. All of them are. This is the one that really brings in the concept that's going to keep being used over and over through the Zelda series a lot of times, of sort of having 2 variations. Like, this is the one that has like the sort of the time jumps. So you're in different times really, which is going to get carried over in Ocarina. It carries over. I immediately think of Twilight Princess, where there's sort of 2 versions of reality, I guess is the best way to put it. And this one lit that candle. So you're probably saying, Jarrod, what the heck? This is a Stone Cold classic. What's it doing at number 8 for you? I still love it, no doubt. The reason this one is low for me, it's very unique to me. Bad timing. I never played this one when it was sort of came out. And off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember when this one came out. If you made me guess, I'd say 1993. That's a guess. I didn't do as much gaming basically in high school, which for me was about 92 to 95. and I did a little bit of gaming in there. I did a lot of the Mortal Kombat and the Street Fighter game, much more of a fighting games thing that I would do with my friends, and a couple of diversion other games here and there. But Zelda, I didn't like sit down and deal with Zelda like I did on the NES. When I was an NES kid in late elementary and middle school, Zelda, yes. Zelda 2, yes. Zelda 3 kind of got by me. I did not play this game until about 2003. I that's when my interest kind of got rekindled in Zelda, and I was like working on Ocarina of Time. I think I beat Ocarina, and then I think I was like, well, I never did beat Link to the Past, so I went back. And I think a lot of you guys are starting to go, oh, I see now, because I went from a game like Ocarina, and then I went back to play Link to the Past, which is still a great game and all that, but it's tough to go from the next big leap. And let's be honest, going from the Super NES to the N64 was a huge leap. Then going back and playing the game you missed takes a lot of the magic out of it. I certainly believe if I had played this at the time that it came out in the early 90s, I would have a much stronger love for it. I'd have a nostalgia for it. But I don't, because I played it later. Still thought it was great. Still thought it was fantastic. I'm pretty sure they released and I might be making this up. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like eventually down the road they released a handheld version of this game, and I played it and beat it again on that. So yeah, or like, let me know in the comments. Did they do a handheld version of this game, or am I thinking of Link's Awakening? Because I remember really enjoying that too. We're not going to cover it because it's not a main home console game. You know that Link's Awakening is a handheld. Although I guess they do have a new version of it now for the Switch. Anyway, we're not covering Link's Awakening. But anyway, back to this Link to the Past. Fantastic game. Really is the first one to develop the two versions of reality thing, and I'll always respect it for that. And it's very cleverly done, especially with the limitations of a Super Nintendo. So I do love this game, but it is at number 8. Let's go to number 7. Number 7, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword on the Wii. Let me be honest. When I went back and did my replay over the last couple of years, I did not replay Skyward Sword, and it's not because I was like, oh, I'm not going to replay Skyward Sword. It's just I haven't gotten around to it yet. So this one might be low just because I'm going off of the one time that I did beat it, which is when it was new. I got it. I still have it in that gold box that came with the Wiimote that's like extra sensitive for this game and all that. And I remember playing it, and I remember enjoying it and having good thoughts about it, but I haven't played it since. I really need to do a refresh because honestly, the reason that it's low on the list, I'll remind everybody, I love all these games. It's really tightly packed, but it might raise higher if I do a replay on it. And you know, the same thing could be said for Link to the Past, to be honest with you, because I didn't replay either. That one I'm still going off my 2003-ish memory. But now we're talking about Skyward Sword, which I beat right about the time it came out, and I've never revisited it. The reason it sits at 7, though, is because I did beat it at the time it came out, and I remember almost nothing about it. I remember liking it. I remember thinking it was good, enjoyable. But the fact that there's no standout concept to it or moment really tells me something. You know, I have to listen to that bit of my instinct and say, I mean, I played Link to the Past in 2003, and I remember more of sort of the gimmicks and quirks of that game than I do Skyward Sword, which I played well after 2003 when it came out on the Wii. So that's why I'm like, I can't rank it terribly high since I don't remember anything about it. Now, if I do get a chance to go back and replay it, which I very well might, I'd love to, that might change. But for now, it sits at number 7. Let's go to number 6. Number 6 is the OG, the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, before they, really even knew what they had. Well, I'll never forget the day I first laid eyes on this. Listen, I was in 5th grade, maybe 6th grade. when I saw this game. I was living in Germany. Nintendo was getting very popular, but because I lived in Germany and we were Americans, using the NTSC American Nintendos and needing the NTSC American games and not the PAL stuff, games were exceptionally hard to come by because you have to remember they're sort of wildly popular in the United States, and we're military kids, so we're American kids living in Germany. We have to wait for the PX system to get the games, and when they would get them, they would fly off the shelves because it was just so rare to get them. Nintendo was wildly popular. It was hard to find games over there. And I still remember, I can't remember if it was fifth or sixth grade. I went over to my buddy Jason's house, and my other friend Jeremiah was there. And Jeremiah had just got back from the States. He'd taken a visit home, and he had gotten a copy of Legend of Zelda. And I was blown away. First of all, gold cartridge. Okay, it was a gold cartridge, and I love it. It immediately stood out from the pack. And then I started watching the gameplay, and it's almost, I almost have to talk myself out of not constantly putting the original Legend of Zelda at number one. It's kind of like when you talk about movies, right? And there's maybe a whole series, James Bond might be a good example, where there's a whole series of them, and they're all very cool, and we all have our favorites. It'd be easy to put Dr. No at number one just because it's the one that started it all. And there's a part of me that wants to put Legend of Zelda, the original, at number one because it's the one that started it all. But I'm looking at it more of a replayability. How much fun do I have when I'm playing it type of a deal. I will say that Legend of Zelda on NES is the Zelda game that I have beaten the most amount of times. I beat it when I was a kid. I replayed it and beat it again when I was in college. I remember post-college for me, which is I graduated in 99, so around 99, 2000, 2001, the whole ROM thing, getting like programs like Nesticle so you can play NES ROMs on your laptops or your home computers became a very big thing. It was it was in the heyday of Napster and LimeWire and piracy in general. So I remember getting this on a ROM and playing it on PC, beating it again. Then I remember when it became available on the Wii Virtual Console, got it, beat it again. I beat this game at least 4 times in my life. And that's one of the most fun things about it is you could always go back to it and always revisit it, and it's always welcoming and it's always fun. And it's one of those things where it's amazing that they got so much right the first time that will echo through the eternity of Legend of Zelda. There are key things in this game that are key things in every Zelda game. Like I said, I just finished Tears of the Kingdom. All right, the heart system and heart containers all pretty much still work the same way. There's still swords and master swords, and there's still the bow and arrow is still super important. The one thing that I think really, especially in the later, the whole Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild thing that kind of faded, even though it's still there, is how important and useful the boomerang was here. The boomerang was like this really important, useful thing, and I feel like it fades in importance over time. And you can still get boomerangs in the more modern games, but they're just not like as relied upon, because I feel like the boomerang was like the first. There's a lot of ways you can play this game, but like the typical playthrough, it's like the first extra accessory weapon that you get, and they make good use of it. And I remember them making good use of it in other iterations of Zelda as well, but that particularly makes me a little sad that the boomerang sort of lost favor by the time we've gotten to the modern era. But anyway, back to Legend of Zelda on the NES. Fantastic game. Could pick up and play it to this day. I definitely recommend going back and doing replay on it for anybody, especially if you're a younger gamer. Here I am going on 50 years old. If you're a younger gamer and you've just sort of started in the Zelda world, it's going to be tough to go back, especially if you've started in the sort of Breath of the Wild and beyond era. It's going to be tough to go back. But I think even if you did, and you're like, I'm going to put up with these old graphics and this old gameplay, I still think you're going to find a great gem of a game in the original Legend of Zelda. They just got so much right, and it's that puzzle solving Miyamoto always said he wanted gamers to feel a sense of success when they solve puzzles. He wants you to feel the weight of the game. He wants you to feel invested in the adventure, and they got that right from the very first one. You still feel that way. So I easily could be talked into putting it at number one for nostalgia reasons and for its place in gaming history. But from a fun point of view, it's at 6. Going to 5. Number 5, I have Ocarina of Time. I bet this sits at the number 1 spot for a lot of you guys out there, and I think that's wonderful. This game is wonderful. This is the first time I would say Zelda expanded and exploded. Like it was all top down until this. This is where we move into the 3D world. 3D gaming had really become popularized by Tomb Raider, showed the world how to do it well. And of course, Mario 64 had shown the world how to do it well. And a lot of the Mario 64, of course, is in-house Nintendo. You can see it sort of influencing the 3D world of Ocarina of Time. And I think this game is just incredible. It really is. Like, this, to me, was the first must-have game of the N64. In fact, I bought my N64 a little late. I want to say 98-ish. And the day I bought it, I bought 3 games. Okay. I bought Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I bought GoldenEye. And I bought Superman 64. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That is literally the 3 games I bought the day I bought the system. Ocarina completely changes the landscape of Legend of Zelda. It is a wonderful, wonderful game. I recently did the replay through it, and still super immersive, great music, memorable levels. Oh man, the water level, man. That water level is one of the few things that I think holds this game back. Like, again, I came to it luckily in the internet era. So the first time I beat it in the late 90s, there was enough sort of gamer websites out there with walkthroughs in them that would save your sanity. Or you could always buy one of those strategy guides. Can't remember which one of those I used, but I had to use one to get to the water level, which was funny because when I revisited it last year, maybe 12, maybe 18 months ago, I played this game again, all the way through, beat it again. And I remember I was like, I want to do it. I wanted to do all my replays without using strategy guides or anything like that, like kind of going from memory. We did use a strategy guide a couple of instances, more so my son could sort of follow along and feel like he was part of it. Because again, he was 7, 8 years old, following along, being a part of it. But I really just kind of wanted to rely on instincts and really experience it the way that developers wanted you to do it. And I got to the water level and I was working real hard to make that happen. And I think I actually did have to crack and be reminded that there's like this really obscure switch or something you have to find at the very bottom of the central tower that's hidden behind a crate or something like that. Whew. But if that's your only picadillo of a game of this magnitude, that's pretty good. There's a lot to love in this game. It brought fresh energy and fresh life to the series. Can't say enough about it. We've hit the top 5, right? So I told you this is a compressed list. Now we're even more compressed. Like pretty much any one of these top 5 could end up being my number 1 on a given day. A lot of love for this game. Yeah, it's wonderful. Number 4. Sitting at my number 4 spot is Twilight Princess. This one probably made the biggest leap when I did my replay over the last couple months. Because this one, much like I mentioned with Skyward Sword, I had played it when it came out. I did pick up the GameCube version, which is why I use that image here. I realized it came out on GameCube and Wii, I think, at the same time. I played it on GameCube. I still remember where I was when I bought it. I remember how much I paid for it. I was at the local movie gallery where we still had video rental stores, but they were starting to go out of business. More and more movie galleries were shutting down. And the good news for me is I live really close to where movie gallery headquarters was. in Dothan, Alabama, and they were shipping all the movie galleries that were closing were shipping all their videos and video games to this one location to liquidate. That's where I picked up this game. I picked it up on liquidation at that place for $19.99. Anyways, going back through my replay, I just was really taken with how much deeper this game was than I'd remembered, how good the story was, how engaging it was, how engrossed I got in it. This was really a huge, huge step for me, going especially from, the Majora's Mask Ocarina level to this is sort of the next big step. And a big step indeed. It looks good. It plays good. Your mileage may vary on Midna. I enjoyed Midna. I feel like she was an improvement from Navi. Turning into a wolf was very unique. Again, that sort of harkens back to me to the Link to the Past era, where you're playing in two realities. And this one, you have sort of the dark realm and the regular realm. And there's just a lot of cool little standout things, like one of the things I always remember is going up to the snow area and like going to the Yeti house and all that stuff, collecting the light balls, all that stuff. Just I don't know. This is one that would have probably been lower on my list just because I thought it mildly forgettable until I gave it the replay. And when you replay them all tightly together like I did, you start to really see the levels, the tiny little levels of difference. And I ended up really enjoying Twilight Princess. In fact, I would say of the replays, this was the second strongest standout in the replays, and we have yet to see the first. Number 3, Tears of the Kingdom. Just beat it 10 days ago. Incredible game. Wonderful game. So much to do. I spent 3 to 4 months on it. I did a lot of the additional stuff. Again, that's Tears of the Kingdom's biggest strength is, especially for a gamer like me and how I like to play games these days, low stress, lots to do, lots of things to go take care of. This was perfect for that because I made a multiple day adventures out of finding every well, finding every cave, finding every sage's will, finding every outfit, leveling up every outfit. I mean, I made a full adventure out of this game. And it was wonderful. Now, why is it only at number 3? Because it is, I think, the grandest scale adventure they've made to date. So really what it is Breath of the Wild with some sky level, right? And some underground levels, and both of which are pretty sizable with plenty to do. It lost some ground with me with the underground. Okay, that was a very expansive thing. And remember how I said I don't like stress in my games? That underground felt stressful, but not too stressful. It was probably just the right amount of stress, whereas you're sort of trying to navigate to each light route to get the light routes turned on. It makes everything a lot easier. So from that aspect of the game, for the guy who likes a lot of things to do, I like the light route system, certainly. There's some neat things to be found underground, some neat arena battles. Really like the story. Not a lot of story happens underground except for the Yiga clan stuff, and that was a lot of fun. I won't lie, that was fun. But I didn't get a lot of mileage out of the underground. I didn't think it was all that great. I liked the sky levels better. I liked the challenge of being able to get to different parts of the sky levels, whether you're using a tower or you have to build a device or whatever to get to where you need to go. I thought those were a little more fun. Biggest downside, the building of devices, the whole building of Zonai devices. I found that just game-breakingly painful at parts. I got to build this, plank with 2 hooks on it so I can slide down a cable or whatever. And it's not super intuitive. The controls I found, I played it on the Switch Lite, especially when I'm like spinning the objects and trying to get them at the right angle. I would swear I'm just hitting spin it this way, and then I don't know, the controller would pick an input that it would quick tilt it, and I'd have to get it back to level. It was annoying. Okay, I'm straight up saying the reason this game This game could easily be at number one, but I think it had an over reliance on the building mechanism. Didn't really care for that at all. One of the smartest things they did was do the auto build thing that you can learn as you go, a skill you can develop. Auto build helped, but it did not cure the pace breaking problem of building. The other thing I couldn't stand about it while I'm complaining about auto build is like, let's say you need to make a quick raft. Maybe you found a Korok guy who needs to meet his other Korok guy, and you're like, okay, got to make a quick raft, and you got this little, wooden plank, and you've got the little fan that you can attach. And what do you got to do to make the fan go? You got to hit it, right? Well, if they give you, especially if they give you sort of the brittle wood plank, and you go to hit that thing, and the game interprets that hitbox as you hit the wood, it's going to smash the wood. And now you have just a fan, which is not going to get you across. You've lost your platform. And I was just like, that is so annoying. That is like super, super annoying. Or like there was one where I was, building one of the ones where you plank of wood, and you put a couple of hooks on it, and it'll slide down a thing. I think I had to put a fan on it. And so I drew my weapon, I hit the fan, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Everything's fine. But what I had forgotten was my weapon was a flame sword. So I hit it, and guess what? The wood plank I was standing on caught on fire. And that was frustrating. So there's a lot of, I don't mean to sit here and make this complaint. So this is the freshest one in my mind. So this tends to happen. If I'm going to throw out one more complaint, I have to put this one out there. I had mentioned earlier, I did all the caves, I did all the wells and all that stuff. I can say it, specifically the caves, and getting all the bubble gems. Okay, because I was collecting bubble gems and I was trading it to that dude for the special masks and the monster parts and blah 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 until you run out, and then he's like, hey, there's still like 100 bubble gems out there, come back and see me when you collected them all. And I'm like, that is a tall order, man. 100 bubble gems. I spent multiple days tracking down each and every cave. I did go online and use I like to go online and get a map, and the map will show you where all the caves are. I like that method more so than a walkthrough or whatever, because at least it still requires me to do, it's a little more fun because it requires a little investigation for me, because like I know generally where the cave is, but I still have to work some things out to get inside oftentimes. So that's the way I did it. Did 100 of those bad boys or whatever, it's close to 100, whatever it was. And so I'm thinking this is going to have a sweet reward. I'm really thinking heart containers are especially hard to come by, and Tears of the Kingdom. You pretty much get them every four shrines. There's like, basically what I'm saying is I think there's only one mission in the whole game that gets you the heart container, and it ain't this one. I got all the bubble gems and I took it to the guy, and he gave me a piece of cloth for my paraglider, my little hang glider thing. And man, this game puts a lot of energy into the whole making cloth patterns that you can swap out for your hang glider. And I thought, well, that's cool, because I wanted to see what bonuses I could get from that. Are there certain cloth patterns that will let you soar farther? Is there a cloth pattern that maybe will let you be able to drop bombs from the paraglider? Or maybe there's one where, if you use a certain pattern, that when your sage, hits you with the wind burst, it'll actually lift you up and give you a little more elevation. Like, oh, that would be great. No, it's all cosmetic. It's all cosmetic. There's no change to performance. And I thought, why is the game, still bugs me, why is it so hung up on these cloth patterns that don't change the use of the paraglider, the hang glider? I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, there's no benefit. It's nothing but a waste of your time to go do that. So yeah, I tracked down 100 bubble gems. I go, the guy's like, here's a piece of cloth for your, and I'm like, what? So that was probably the most frustrated I got. Okay, I'm done complaining. It's at number 3 for a reason. Scope and scale. Okay, it's every bit as fun and detail oriented. Oh man, the detail, the things you can do. You could spend days just doing different combinations of weapons and shields with, you can attach a bomb to a shield if you want to. Like, it's so many different things you can do and try out. And I love the fact that environments come into play. So Since this is running long anyway, fun story about this game. All right, I'm playing the game, and I finally get to the part where you start the game up in the sky, and then you come down to Hyrule. Right, when you get down there, you're nobody. You got like no armor. You're pretty much naked. And I land there. It's raining. It's thunderstorming. And the first thing I see when I land, off to my left, I think it was, is a tower. And I remember how important towers are because I played Breath of the Wild. So I was like, I'm gonna go get that tower. And I go over there, and this tower, each tower kind of has, a lot of times has a little trick to it. This one's basically just surrounded by an enemy camp. And I'm nobody. I don't have the power or the ability. I got like 3 hearts and no armor and a stick for a weapon or something like that. I can't take on this enemy army, but I did mention it's thunderstorming. One of the cool things about this game is there's so many different factors that change things. And in the enemy camp, they have a metal spiked ball. It's one of the first things they try to get you with when you walk up the camp. They roll the spiked ball down at you, and I have the Ultra Hand, so I can grab it and move it with Ultra Hand. So I start using the spiked ball to smack into the bad guys. They're all starting to come down this bridge at me, and I'm kind of smacking into them. And I realize I'm in a thunderstorm, and the lightning's coming, and it's coming to the ball. So I push it way far away from me into the bad guys. The lightning comes, boom, and just it obliterates all the bad guys. And I have now defeated everybody in the fortress using my craftiness that I learned from Breath of the Wild. I'm so proud of myself. And I go up to the tower to like unlock the tower so I can open my first tower. And it won't let me. You can't begin to open towers until you go to like the main hub area and someone gives you like the mission to go open towers. And now you can open towers. I spent probably like half an hour like trying to get that tower to open. Because I was like, I did everything I needed to do. Anyway, that's just a stupid aside story. This game is huge. It's fun to play. The addition of the above and below levels are certainly welcome. I got less mileage out of the below one, enjoyed the above one a little more. Just so much to do. Just huge game, wonderful game, lots of fun. That's why it's in number 3. Number 2. This one probably got the biggest boost from my replay. Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. This is a game I remembered really enjoying when it came out. Sort of the Game Boy era. I mean, basically on the Game Boy, you have Wind Waker and you have Twilight Princess. And man, as you saw, Twilight Princess was pretty high on my rankings. And here's Wind Waker at number 2. I remember a lot of people were put off by it from its cartoony look. They thought it was too, kiddie. I tell you that, I mean, when I first looked at it, I thought, well, it's definitely the most different looking game. And it did have more of a kid's appeal. But once I got into playing it, like, I don't really, like, you stop seeing it. It's like when you go to a 3D movie and you put your 3D glasses on in the beginning, you're like, oh, 3D. And by the end of it, you don't really notice it anymore because it is. And when you kind of get past that visual of it, and some of the visuals are kind of neat, with its cell shading effects, and it has a real almost comic booky feel to it, which is fun. Really neat designs, and just a really big open adventure. This is when sandbox games, some could say Legend of Zelda, the first one, is the first really big sandbox game. But sandbox games like GTA and stuff like that were getting popular at this time. And this is like a huge game with so much to do. And you would think, with being in such a big water covered world and you do a lot of stuff in the boat, that it would get boring or whatever. But I always felt like there was always something, whether you're finding a treasure off the side of the boat, or you find one of those fish that gives you hints, or, you go into battle, like a nautical battle with some of the other ships, or you find like a floating fortress of bad guys out there. This game just, it does the whole, Zeldas are all fetch quests. It does the whole fetch quest thing almost to perfection. I thought it's just so much fun to explore and learn and expand and make your map better, all this stuff. Just an engaging game. And again, it really bumped up my list through the replay. In fact, when we decided to do the replay, I think this is the first one we replayed with my son with me. And, maybe that affected it. Maybe it was his joy of it and his getting into it. It's sort of that bonding, the father and son bonding over Zelda, franchise that I love. That certainly could play a part in it. But I was just sitting there marveling about how good this game really was. Just the perfect balance of adventure, exploration, difficulty, interesting dungeons, interesting bosses. It really felt to me like Ocarina of Time was a game changer with its 3D world. It really felt to me like the next big polish step from that. Like the graphics are more polished. I felt like the adventure was a little more polished, and things just kind of made a little more sense. Maybe a little less cryptic, maybe where I'm going. I don't know. Just the fun factor does not get much higher than Wind Waker. So glad I replayed it, because when I did play it, I was in my 20s and I was probably like, I'm too cool for I need the more realistic, that's how we got Twilight Princess, was people wanted to get away from the kiddie version. I want to be cool. This is a heck of a lot of fun. Now, don't let the graphics fool you. And I think the graphics are quite charming. Wonderful game, which is why it comes in at number 2. Coming in at number 1, you figured it out through process of elimination, Breath of the Wild. And I really had to think on this one for a long time. I remember when I first played, because Breath of the Wild is exceptionally different. Like, especially when you forget it, like pretend Breath of the Wild just came out. And it's the only newest game. We haven't gotten Tears of the Kingdom yet. So we don't have sort of a universe built around it. It is so different from the others. In many ways, it's still the same. It's, a lot of things to do and quests and all that stuff. Certainly, big quests, dungeons, all that stuff it has the same, but the mechanics of it, the overhaul of the mechanics of Breath of the Wild were huge. And I think a lot of us gamers, if we're honest with ourselves from the beginning, did not like it. To this day, I am not a fan. It still bugs me. And I'm going to say something we're all thinking of. You got your weapon and you're fighting, and it breaks. Like the breakable, the damageable weapons. Okay. Because it was never a thing before. And now all of a sudden it is. And it's super annoying. Okay. It's annoying for 2 reasons. Right. Number 1, let's just jump right to it. You find yourself the Master Sword, and you could apply this complaint to Tears of the Kingdom as well. You earn yourself the Master Sword. And what is it? You're like, finally, I got a weapon that's not going to break. And what does it do? Oh, it's out of energy. You have to wait like 10 minutes for it to re-energize. Why? Like, your biggest reward for earning the Master Sword should be, I don't have to worry about breaking it or it running out of energy anymore. On the one hand, I get that they wanted you to have that game mechanic where you're kind of constantly having to reevaluate, your strategies. That's fine. I think instead of the solution to that is, instead of having the Master Sword run out of energy, just make it a decently strong weapon, but not overwhelmingly strong. Like, if you want an overwhelmingly strong weapon, you should have to build it. And I just recently beat Tears of the Kingdom, and I want to say I looked online to find out that the Master Sword does like a 30 damage. And I certainly had some weapons in my cache that I had built that were, higher than that, 60, 70 damage weapons. So I don't think you would lose anything by making the Master Sword, maybe just make it a 25 damage weapon, and that's that. Okay. And then I can find, especially you can develop weapons a lot more in Tears of the Kingdom than you can in Breath of the Wild. But I think you see what I'm saying. Like, let there be stronger weapons that you can find that do eventually break, but have that one base, the whole run out of energy thing. All right. So I promised you 2 complaints about that system. Here comes my second one. Okay. So let's say I've got an inventory of 6 weapons, right? I got a couple of swords, maybe a spear, an axe, whatever. Doesn't matter. And I'm fighting somebody, fighting, and my weapon breaks. Right? Why can I not have it in the game to where not only do I have 6 weapons, but I have 6 weapons in order of priority? So if it breaks, Link automatically gets out the next one. There's nothing worse than fight. There's like 60 billion things going on. Your weapon breaks, and maybe you don't even quite realize it. And you got this great moment. You're like, I got this guy. Link's going, I don't have anything. Automatically go to the next weapon. just automatically go to the next weapon. That's all I ask. All right, I'm going to complain about one more thing, and I don't remember if it's been a while since I played Breath of the Wild, but I don't remember if it happens there, but I know it happens in Tears of the Kingdom. Middle of a fight, and you realize, oh, I don't have the right weapon that I want for this guy. So you hit the pause menu, you go to say, I want select the weapon I want, and it won't let you do it because the animation of you swinging the weapon you have before isn't done yet. And you're in this key moment. You're like, can you switch right now? Can't. Unpause. Pause. Can I switch it now? Not yet. Not done with your animation yet. Unpause. Pause. Can I switch it now? Not yet. Your animation's not done. Okay. Didn't like that either. All right. I've done an awful lot of complaining for a guy who's on his number one game. But I think it's important to do that because if those are the complaints, because the Breath of the Wild, I think the biggest complaint I heard from all my fellow gamers is nobody liked the breakable weapon system. I didn't like it at first either. I just laid out the little things about it that I still don't like. But overall, when I look at it and I go, I get it. I get what they're doing. They're making you be strategic with your planning, especially when you got to figure out what weapons do I want to hold on to, what weapons are going to benefit me in which situations. It really makes you think about it, and I think that's what they were going for. They wanted you to be strategic to a level you'd always had to be strategic in Zelda, but when Breath of the Wild came along, it was strategic to a level that we had never really seen before in a Zelda game, especially. So its biggest weakness, I think, like I said, most people here complain about go, not really big on the breakable weapons thing. If you look at it through the right angle, you go, it really does add a dimension to the game that gives it a whole other layer. So that's just one part of it. Let's talk about why it's at number one. It changed it. I would say this was the biggest shift in the Zelda series from, I think the biggest shift happened, we started it in the NES, and I think probably Ocarina of Time with its 3D world really shifted it. And then we had a lot of developments in that, and then this was the next big step. And the size of it, the scope of it, the things you can do with weapons, the things you can do with foods and cooking different foods to get different results, like the weather affecting things, you can use it to your advantage. I remember playing with a buddy of mine, and he wasn't so powerful yet, and he was fighting one of those big bosses with the one eye, Hennix, I think, and Thunderstorm. And my buddy had worked it to where he had gotten the guy, I think, to drop his weapon, and my buddy actually tossed his weapon out towards the guy because the lightning was about to hit it. And not only did it work as a lightning attractor to kill the Hennix, but I think the Hennix actually went to pick it up and fried him. And I thought, this is mind blowing, like the amount you can do on this. And they really learned this. This is the game. Breath of the Wild is the Zelda game where I think the player, more so than any other ones, can really, really pick the pace at which they want to go. Like, you could always do that, especially once you got into the 3D world ones. You could kind of always go fiddle around a bit, but there's so many things you could fiddle around with in this game. I think this is the one, and I hope it's been a while since I played this, so I may be conflating it with Tears of the Kingdom, but I think this is the first one where you get the camera and the compendium thing, where like you could spend days just going and taking pictures of stuff to add to your compendium if you wanted to just take a break from that, or be like, hey, I just really want to go find this armor set, or I really want to go capture every different type of freaking butterfly in the game. Like they've always had that to an extent in Zelda games. There's always been like a fishing mechanic or a bug catching mechanic, but this is, it's huge. It's expansive. And I going back to my original point, I think you can pick your pace more so in Breath of the Wild, and then of course in Tears of the Kingdom. So I guess the real question you might be asking is, why do I have this ranked above Tears of the Kingdom? And I think it's really because this was the first big expansion. I feel like Tears of the Kingdom is a great game that builds on this, but I think this is what broke the door open. And again, these are kind of ranked by how much I enjoy playing them, what my memories of them are. And this one, while it had that frustrating factor at first because the whole mechanics of weapons and stuff was different, it just has this big and lasting impression that I'm really glad Tears of the Kingdom built on. That's why Tears of the Kingdom sits in my number 3 out of 10 spot. But when it comes to just sort of the fun and just the amazement of when it hits you of how big and game changing it is, the step from basically Skyward Sword to this, it can't be overstated. It can't be. It's amazing. I mean, this is the new standard going forward, and I'm excited to see what they do in the future. I truly loved what they did with Tears of the Kingdom, and that is my top 10 list. So we can revisit it one more time. In summary, my number 1 was Breath of the Wild, basically because of its huge leap forward. My number 2 was Wind Waker, just because I thought it was very polished and a lot of fun and just so memorable. Number 3, Tears of the Kingdom, for absolutely taking Breath of the Wild and adding some layers and some interesting aspects to it, and having a lot of fun just doing all the little side quests and nooks and crannies of it. Number 4, raised up for me a lot over the years, was Twilight Princess. I really feel like I undervalued this game back in the day. Learned a lot from it on replay that I was like, this is really cool. I think turning it into a wolf is a lot of fun. Number 5, right there in the middle of the pack, even though I do consider all these top tier games, Ocarina of Time, another game changer, tons of fun. Just like very much the gold standard, if you will, no pun intended for gold cartridges, but just very much so like this is the core of Zelda. Number 6, the original NES one. Still fun to play to this day because it has wonderful layouts and mechanics. Number 7, I have Skyward Sword. It might shuffle a little bit once I get a replay on it. Just haven't played it since it was new, and I don't have a great memory of it. Still like it, still fond of it, but I need to get back in touch with Skyward Sword. Number 8, which probably is the most frustrating one on this list for most people, was Link to the Past. And again, I explained myself. I came to it too late. I basically had to go back to play it, back in time, no pun intended, to play it. And so it doesn't have the nostalgia grab for me that I think it has for a lot of people. Still think it's a great game. Would happily go pop it in right now and play it again. Number 9 was the one that fell the farthest from me over the years. Used to sit firmly in my number 1 is Majora's Mask. I thought it was wildly creative. I still believe it is. It just has a stress factor in it now that I don't enjoy gaming at the age of near 50. I don't need stress in my games. I need fun in my games. And while it's still fun, that 3-day clock oftentimes creates the stress that I don't need, but I still think it's great. I still think it's a great and amazing game. And 10, coming in dead last, but still a wonderful game. I'm glad I own it. I'd pop it in and play it right now, is Zelda 2. It's just the most different from all of them. And I found it just to be a little too cryptic because I feel like it was in that Nintendo Power era of games where you kind of had to have Nintendo Power to figure it out. But still great, still fun. Love them all. That, ladies and gentlemen, will wrap us up at almost an hour to go through all 10 games. I hope you really enjoyed this. I got the banner going across the bottom. I am Jarrod Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist. I'm here on behalf of the Longbox Crusade. We mostly do podcast stuff, but we do clearly YouTube video stuff from time to time. We'd love it if you gave us the like, the subscribe, and all that stuff. But really, our bread and butter is the podcast world. So if you kind of want to dip your toe into podcasting, you can take any podcast you like. You can look up Longbox Crusade. You're going to find us. We have a whole bunch of shows that are fun, and I hope you really, really enjoy joining us. Speaking of joining us, we do have a Crusaders Club. We have, at this moment, I have it right here on the other screen. We have 40 wonderful Crusaders Club members who have joined at patreon.com/longboxcrusade. They're enjoying early access to content. They're enjoying priority seating to be on podcast shows as guests. They get to vote on show content. They get entered for raffle prizes automatically. All kinds of neat stuff like that going on over there. We'd love to have you. So yeah, what is your favorite Zelda game? Which of my top 10 did you find you were like, heck yeah, that's exactly where I would put it? And feel free to complain about, about the ones. I'll just remind everybody, this is just a playability and fun list for me personally. I'm not, if yours is completely backwards, I don't care, as long as we're both playing Zelda and we're both loving it. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I'm Jarrod Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist. I'm at Yard Sale Artist on X and Facebook and Instagram. And you can check out my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. And until next time, I'm going to act froze.